This isn't justice. This is politics. It's political warfare, and we see it happening in third world countries all over the world. I never thought I'd see it happening in the United States of America.
Former President Trump's largest show of support yet from Republican allies at court today, doing some of the talking for the former president outside the courtroom as the trial gets back underway for the final part of today's session downtown in New York. So our new Fox polling shows that the Trump lead over Biden is eroding slightly down to just a 1-point advantage in the very latest Fox poll. Obviously, that's within the margin of error. Let's bring in our panel. Kellyanne Conway, former senior counselor to President Trump, president of KAC Consulting, and a Fox News contributor. Hugh Hewitt, nationally syndicated radio host who just spoke with former President Trump the other day, and Robert Wolf, former Obama economic advisor, founder and CEO of 32 Advisors and a Fox News contributor. Great to have all of you with us. You know, I just want to pull this up first. This is another part of the Fox poll that goes to intensity on each side of the aisle. Biden supporters, 51% say my vote is for my candidate. 48% say it is against the opponent. Trump supporters, 71%, it is for my candidate, 29% only against his opponent. Kellyanne, weigh in on the tightening of these polls for us.
Sure. So national polls are important, Martha, because they show us mood and trend lines and a lay of the land. I think the statistic you just showed is incredibly important. It's not that different from what Hillary Clinton was doing in 2016 when Trump won the first time, meaning that if your campaign and your voters, half of them think that this is really about the other guy, that's perilous territory, because elections are about two things. They're about the future, not the past, and they're about you telling me what you can do to improve my life, not just how bad the other guy is. And I do feel that when you look at the disapproval rating of Joe Biden on core issues like his handling of Hamas in the Middle East, handling of the border, handling the economy, their answer to that still seems to be Trump, 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 and more Trump. He has to be more affirmative. Look, the swing state polls are incredibly important. This election will come down to between 19 and 22 counties, not even states, counties. And there you do see some movement toward the former president. If I were the former president, Trump, I would look at a couple things and improve upon them in this Fox News poll. One is, among those who say Trump is better on handling the economy and immigration, roughly 10 to 12% still want to go for Joe Biden. Among the so-called double haters, I don't like the term, let's call them double doubters, about 15% of the Fox News poll, Biden is slightly leading there right now. Okay. And finally, among those who softly disapprove of Biden, 41%, he's still doing well enough. So I think there's still room for both of them. Last point, all the people are saying, look at my poll. What happens if Donald Trump is convicted? We're asking a different question in the field right now. What happens if he is acquitted or has a hung jury or has a directed verdict? Then I think he's unstoppable.
And as we just heard, it's likely to be overturned on appeal. And Jonathan Turley just said it could happen very quickly. Hugh Hewitt, your take, on what is sort of the next catalyst in this? Because we do see very tight national polls. And when you look at the likely voters versus registered voters in swing states, those get very tight as well, Hugh.
Well, I listen to Kellyanne when it comes to polling, and I have for more than 2 decades because she's the expert. But I'll tell you what, as a journalist, I thought was interesting yesterday. President Biden doesn't want to debate, but he has to debate. President Trump wants to debate, so he eagerly accepted the debate. I think what we saw unfold yesterday was President Biden looking at the numbers, consulting with his team, and panicking, especially about that Siena New York Times poll coming out of Nevada that shows Donald Trump up
that's a whopper.
12 points. And
Biden won Nevada last time. I want to remind everyone. Yeah, go ahead, Hugh.
I just think it means Latinos are breaking to the former president rather significantly, as well as some African-American men, and that Joe Biden is debating because he has to debate because he's in free fall.
Robert Wolf, your take.
Well, obviously, Hugh's very bright, as is Kellyanne. I would disagree with both of them on a few things. First of all, with respect to the excitement around President Biden, I mean, when you see the stock market is an all-time high, when you see a lot of the Republicans calling for recession, but instead we've had growth outperform President Trump, when you see unemployment at lows and the job market just on fire, and then when you see things like in Wisconsin with the new AI plant with Microsoft, or in Arizona with the new chips plant with Intel, I would just say that these polls really don't show where this country's going, and I'm very excited about the direction we have. And more importantly, I would say 30 polls have had Biden up, both in Michigan and other states. And then lastly, I think, as Kellyanne knows, because she's the pro at this, since Dobbs, I think Democrats have been outperforming both on ballot initiatives and on elections by 6 to 8 points, whether it's Kentucky, Kansas, Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and those aren't all blue states. So, I think we still have 6 months to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We did see that, Kellyanne, for a while. It feels like there's a little bit of a momentum shift that has happened since we saw those ballot initiatives, but we haven't seen anybody, really vote since then. I'm interested in these stories about Minnesota potentially being in play, because we always focus on the same states and the ones that you pointed out, Kellyanne. But there's Virginia, Minnesota, there are some other places. If the shift that we're seeing in Nevada is real in some other places, this could get very interesting.
No question, Martha. In fact, it's only Donald Trump talking about expanding his map now. There was a little murmur a few weeks ago about Biden being able to compete in Florida because of the abortion initiative. No one thinks that that's true. That state is solidly red. By the way, Ohio, Iowa, and Florida were 3 states that Obama-Biden carried twice that now are solidly red. Nevada is interesting. It's only 6 electoral votes, but we haven't won it presidentially as Republicans since 2004. I wouldn't be surprised if the Biden people pull out of there at some point and try to make it more competitive. I would ask Robert and the Democrats very politely, name the state where you think you could expand your map. We're going to go into Virginia and Minnesota.
A great point.
Where can you expand?
Yeah, Hugh, I want to get a quick thought from Hugh on that, because, you're looking at some of these states and some of the shift that we see in Nevada. Do you think that we're going to see a different dynamic in 5 months?
Absolutely. I think Minnesota is in play. The former president brought that up as well in my conversation with him yesterday. I think New Hampshire is in play. That went to Joe Biden 4 years ago. I think a lot of things, Virginia even, a lot of goes with the running mate if you put Governor Youngkin in there in the second position. But I go back to these debates. Debates change everything, and I'm very happy that we've got 2, because I think former President Trump excels at this medium when he's one-on-one, if and only if the moderators don't throw curveballs at him all day at his head.
Yeah. Kellyanne, are you okay with the parameters that were set? I got to go, so I need a quick answer, but I know that a lot of people are not.
I wish it were Fox News. I think that when you reward people who spend their entire days calling you a liar and not giving you a platform and would prefer to see you in jail if not dead, that's questionable. But I do think that everything that's been said about the debate availability to both Trump and Biden is important. They want to do this for different reasons. That's a sweet spot for Donald Trump. I'm happy to see him debate. I think democracy deserves it. We deserve an opportunity to see these people shoulder to shoulder, free of charge. And I hope 100%. That they'll agree to do one on Fox News.
Well, so do I. That would be great.
With Martha McCallum.
Exactly. With Martha and Brett would be fantastic. Kellyanne, thank you. Robert, thank you. We'll give you the first round next time. Hugh Hewitt, always great to see you, sir. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.